Continuing on here, you'll see more of the same trash amongst here. Oh, that's a big old weed there that they just decided to leave. Trash over here. Weeds. More of the grass and trash. And if you see here, this is what I'm talking about, them using the weed whacker. You can tell that this plant has certainly been cut off with a weed whacker. And they didn't even do a good job at that because they left all of this just hanging here. This is part of the hedge that I mentioned that we asked them to cut. They did not touch it. This is exactly how the hedge looked when they arrived. You see all the greenery indicating it hasn't been touched. And it's still nice and tall up here on the top. Nothing has been touched. Continuing on over here is another flower bed that's marked as a flower bed. And as you see, full of grass, full of weeds, full of random dead leaves and trash that they decided that they didn't need to do. This bush here, we asked them to trim it and shape it so that it wouldn't cover the window. As you can see, it's very large and out of control, and nothing has been trimmed. And the window is hiding way back here. You can't see it because, again, they didn't do as they were asked. Moving on, there is yet another flower bed here around this tree that is just full of grass and dead leaves and weeds, was not touched clearly. And here's another one of the plants that was asked to be cut and shaped so that it didn't cover the window and has not been touched or shaped whatsoever. Over on the other side, back to where we were, there's a water spigot in which there used to be a hose attached and wrapped around the bottom of it. It's not there anymore because they decided to toss it over here. Why they decided to put it over here, I can only presume it was to get it out of the way so that they could do something, but they decided not to put it back. Again, disrespecting our belongings and not taking care of things. Up here, someone ran through our hedges with their car back in 2015, and we had to plant new hedges. This fence that you see here was put into place in order to protect the bushes and keep them growing together, since, they're individual plants that have to grow together into a hedge. They removed it not so that they could cut these bushes, because as you can see, they're pretty high and unruly. I'm assuming they removed it so that they could mow closer to it, because they also did not remove any weeds or anything over here. So I can't say that it was for that, because as you can see down here, there's still lots of weeds and trash hanging around in the bush. But then they proceeded to put this back sloppily. This used to be all up and tight like a fence would be, but now it's sagging, not attached to the poles anymore, and some of the poles aren't even in the ground. They just stuck a couple in there that they thought would suffice because they were in a rush, clearly, and didn't want to finish the job that they were doing. Over here is where they begin to butcher the rest of the hedge. You see how narrow this part of the hedge is. It's not supposed to be that narrow. We discussed taking a foot off of each side. Instead, it looks like they took about 3 feet off of the back here and nothing in the front. So as you can see, there's still weeds and trash growing up inside the bush, which will eventually kill the hedge, and that they were supposed to remove, but they did not. Again, random bricks and things that they just left there that precluded them from doing the job that they were hired to do, but were too lazy to move them anyway. So they remain. And you see how thin this bush is and how far away from the barrier it is. That's a barrier that was here. It was going out to about this dead part on the grass because it was very overgrown. We wanted it to go back just beyond that barrier, which is what we discussed. That's why we said about a foot, maybe a foot and a half if necessary. But it was, again, cut back about 3 feet, 3.5 feet. This is how skinny the poor little hedge is here. But if you look down the course of the hedge, you'll see exactly how wavy and uneven it is. There is not a single part on the hedge that's straight and goes in a straight line. And we've had this hedge at this property since my family has owned it, which was 1954. And it has never once looked this wavy and uneven. So it's not that it's impossible to cut it properly. So again, make a note of how wide it is here, because I'll show you how wide it gets later over here. So continuing down, again, you can just see gouges that they cut out of the hedge in some places. And just the overall unevenness of the job here. The top, we asked them to cut it down well below the mailboxes. And as you can see, it's pretty high over at the beginning and at the end, but they do a little dip by the mailboxes, so it looks like they made it how we asked. Over here we have more flower beds full of trash and weeds. They cut down a plant, this Christmas cactus, that there's just pieces of it because they stuck their weed whacker in it, and cut it down. And this was a birdhouse that was sitting here, and they broke it. As you can see, it's broken here on the side. Here's the random piece. Looks like it was hit with a weed whacker. Yeah, you see that there, they smacked the top of it and hit it with the weed whacker. And the piece of it that goes on the top was found all the way over here because it probably flew when the weed whacker hit it. So again, complete disregard and disrespect for our belongings. See all these undisturbed spider webs because they did not clean anything. Oh, they left some trash from the hedge over here. So they added to the trash that is sticking out from all of these aloe vera plants that they did not do at all. They damaged the mailbox when they were cutting because now it moves, whereas it did not move before, and it wasn't bent like that towards the hedge. Again, you can just see how it keeps getting fatter and fatter. On this side, this is how big it is here compared to how narrow it was up there. And it gets even bigger as we go down. Just more of where you can see the waviness. Again, more trash here. This was my great-grandma's daffodils that she had planted before she passed away in 1995, and they've continued to bloom since then. But if you look closely, they used their weed whacker, and they chopped off some of them because they were being careless. And as you can see, even though they weed whacked the grass down to a lower level, they didn't clean up any of their trash, and that's going to grow back in about a week and a half, just like everything does that you cut down with a weed whacker. Here's some more gouges in the hedge, just showing further unevenness. As you can see here, you can't really see the internal structure of the hedge here because they didn't cut it back as far as they did over there. So there's lots of little tiny twigs as opposed to over there where there was big branches exposed. More trash amongst the plants. Clearly was not touched. They didn't remove any of the weeds, the trash, or the grass inside there. Again, random bricks that they just left sitting out, precluding them from doing the job. Here's probably the thickest part of the hedge, I'd say. At the time, the hedge went out to this pole here. And they cut it back maybe 6 inches or so at this point. Whereas opposed to up there, they cut it back maybe 3 feet. Here's another flower bed showing all the grass and the trash. There's actually physical trash in here. They left some metal rods or something in there. And all this grass and all these weeds they left here. We asked them to remove anything dead, which they did not remove any of the dead leaves on the elephant ear so that they can grow bigger and stronger. They didn't do that, clearly. Again, just exorbitant trash and grass left all around here. Here's another flower bed full of trash and weeds, and this is full of even more trash. This is a bicycle that my mom specifically told them had been left in the flower bed and could be thrown away. She wanted it thrown away. They did not do that. They removed and ran over, it looks like, this drain for the rain gutter. They removed and just threw here a memorial stake that I had for my dog who passed away. And there used to be a flowering boysenberry vine attached to this lattice, and they removed that plant, presumably because they hit it with their weed whacker and cut it, and decided it would be better just to remove it when they shouldn't have had their weed whacker in the flower bed in the first place. We had had that plant for 3 years, and it had just started to flower. And again, they were specifically instructed not to remove anything aside from weeds, grass, and trash. Again, bricks over here that stop them from removing the weeds next to the hot water heater.